Good evening and welcome to Literature in 60 Minutes. My name is Zandile Pooe. Thank you so much for joining us. It is December. We are winding down the year. 2 more weeks and 2021 is out. And it's been such an exciting year for me personally, having started the podcast and speaking to very many authors in between the start date and now, and very many episodes later, I'm still eager to chat to even more people about their literary works. But I think also it's just about the amount of connection and networks of people that I've been able to reach out to, and the insights I've gleaned from the many different authors. So it has been such an exceptional experience in starting the show and continuing with it. And I trust that everybody is just hanging in there, just like I am towards the end of the year. But this week we have yet another author. And we are talking to a gentleman called Mzoli Mavimbela. And he is the author of Masibuyele Embo, He recently won a creative writing award from the South African Literary Awards. And because of this amazing feat, I decided it would be interesting to feature him, because talking about our traditions is something that is very necessary, especially in an era where there's a sense that we are losing much of what we as people are about, and some of our roots, for lack of a better term. But I'm excited to speak to him because I'd like to also touch on the subject of indigenous knowledge systems, because there's some things that we can really learn and take forward, even though we have adapted very much to the Western way of doing things, whether it be medicines or cultural practices. So we just need to see what the indigenous side of things and how it was done in the days of old, and what we can maintain and take forward into the future and be able to teach our children. Even though he is specifically coming from the Xhosa standpoint, I think there is some merit in hearing about how things were done and how we can either maintain or find a way to sustain some of the relevant parts of our history. So I'll be chatting to him right after the break. Please stay tuned. I'll catch you then. Welcome back. Like I said earlier, tonight we are talking to Mzoli Mavimbela, and he is the author of Masibuyele Embo, Pina. It is a literary awards winner in the category of creative writing. And he is here tonight to chat to us more about his book. Welcome, Zo. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. After what we've tried in terms of network, the devil is a liar.
Yeah, it is the order of the day. Like, we are either, on mute, or we are, our screen is not showing, or we are trying to connect. So it is that era. We must just, carry on with it when we can. But I also appreciate efforts on your side to really try and accommodate and meet my requirements. And I really, really appreciate it. So now, tell us a bit about you, Zoli. Where do you come from? Where does your love for writing stem from?
I'm coming from the small town called Port St. John's in Eastern Cape, all the way from Amtata, the former Transkei. But currently, I'm residing in George in the Western Cape, where I'm working there. Because I've tried my best to find jobs in Eastern Cape, but I didn't get any. So that's why I was forced to come to the Western Cape. The rural area that I come from is called Ngongweni location or administration area, because it's a village from rural areas. My home, that's my place of birth.
And where did your love for writing come from?
It comes from the oral storytelling of my granny, the late granny. Her clan was Makiwa, I won't dwell more about the clan side because it's irrelevant for now. But I used to sit there by the fireplace during the night, whereby we were called as a grandchildren. She comes and narrate everything, like it's called Insomi, fairy tales. So I think my interest in terms of literature germinated there before I even went to read books and read. Thereafter, as soon as I went to the school, like primary phases, I saw that I like to read Xhosa because I'm originally from the tribe called Amampondo, down there by the Flagstaff and Lusikisiki. It's other tribe of Nguni people, especially Xhosa tribe from Abambo. But I saw that my love and passion is more about isiXhosa because, unfortunately, the only literature that is prescribed to us is Xhosa, not isiMpondo, not isiHlubi, not isiBhaca, and etc.
I see. And I guess that's the point of the title, Masbuyelembo, because you're quite specific now. That it makes more sense, because if you say Isimbo, then it means it's a particular, tribe and a particular language, I think, and dialect, if I'm not mistaken. So how did you title your book, first things first? Like, Wonagele Pina. I like that. And it's a question because it leaves one to, think for themselves as to what has really happened. So what led you to choose that title?
Yeah, this book is a double barrel. I struggled to decide which title I must take. Because even if I took Masbuyelembo, let's go back to our roots, that was also going to be fine. But I questioned myself, how can I approach this research-based book? Then I decided that, okay, it must have three segments while I write it. Okay. Number one is going to be the literature from other people. Number two is going to be observations, ethnographic research, whereby I go straight to the cultural experts and ask from them, how were you doing these ceremonies in the past? And now, how do you see nowadays? Do we still tracing back what you were doing? Or now everything is a mess in terms of how do we do these ceremonies? And the third part was my observation now, because I went through some of the ceremonies and my culture, I know that. So that's why I saw now, okay, the gap is not everyone is taking our culture and our ceremonies seriously. That's why I asked the question, Konagele Pina, where did we go wrong? So I said no to myself, I must combine the two now so that it triggers the reader's curiosity. What happened now? Why is he saying Konagele Pina instead of, because now he's calling us to go back to our roots. But what else we can do? Because now we're living in the fourth industrial revolution. There's no way that we can go back to our roots. But at least if we can try what we can, then by doing that, we will be preserving our culture and heritage.
Yes. And also looking at the things we can sustain, moving forward, because I don't think everything can be taken wholesale as it was, because the times have changed. But now I think also just to look at another important element of your book is you are a indigenous knowledge systems person. So you have looked into them, you kind of, delve a bit into them in your book, I believe.
Yes. I tapped on the indigenous knowledge systems. And what was also interesting, I'm not sure if it's part of your question, I was also doing my master's degree at Nelson Mandela University.
Oh, yeah.
So and today was my graduation.
Oh, my gosh, congratulations.
I graduated with cum laude, that's why you see this thing here.
Oh, my, cum laude? What? Yes. Oh my gosh, congratulations. I take my hat off to you, my proverbial invisible, graduation hat. And I like that you're also wearing your traditional beads over there.
Yes. It brings myself back to my roots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was saying the title of my thesis was The Views of Amakwala on the Meaning of Umqombothi, which is a traditional beer, and commercial alcohol on the use, and the use of commercial alcohol during the initiation ceremonies. So you see, then during the course of my study, one of my supervisors said, "No, man, you can take this study further and explore indigenous knowledge systems, whereby you can go straight to the rural areas and find out what actually is the meaning of using umqombothi. Because one of the findings in my study, because I targeted 18 years to 35 years newly graduates, they didn't know the meaning of using umqombothi. Some of them, they said, if I do my ceremony without using umqombothi, no one dies. But other cultural experts will say, no, man, it's a must that you must brew umqombothi. And it was very sad to find out the commando brandies and other stuff, and even beers, there is no purpose for them, according to these guys. So that's why I said, okay, maybe then I'm going to like indigenous knowledge system just for that.
Okay, I'm glad because I think as you are someone who is stewarding, this journey for the Xhosa nation at the very least, because I also wanted to find out from you, like, are there certain distinctions, even if it's anecdotal, are there certain distinct distinctions that you found between the Nguni tribes? For instance, something that AmaXhosa particularly practice that is very different for AmaSwati, AmaZulu, and AmaNdebele?
From my personal point of view, I don't think there is such difference between, because we're all from Nguni people, like you mentioned. AmaSwati, AmaZulu, AmaXhosa, AmaNdebele, all of us are practicing initiation. You see, so that means we are similar, even if we do the stuff differently, because each and every region differs on how do they undergo the stuff. But the main purpose is to make a man is a young guy to be a newly initiated man. That's the main purpose. Whether they brew umqombothi, they don't brew, whether they undergo Christian initiation, still the one aim is to make manhood from that. So I can say we're not that different.
Okay.
As Amanguni.
Because I always find it interesting, with us, it becomes a bit of a struggle if you look at how we are raised and brought up within our faith or religion. So if you are Christian and then you still practice elements of your tradition, then there might be, clashes there as to whether it's a Western cultural Christian ethic or principle, or whether it's just a rite of passage, So in initiation, I, with my naive eye, would see it more as a rite of passage. But in religion, it could be seen as something completely different. So what are your thoughts on maybe the crossroads between rites of passage in religion and in tradition?
Zoe Live Radio. The abundant life experience, walking in love. We love gospel music. Zoe Live Radio.
According to the background in the context of the study, it has been found that initiation germinates from Bible.
Yes.
All the way back.
Yes,
yeah. So even if before we took it as AmaXhosa and other tribes and made ours, but that was symbolical for something else in the Bible.
It was a covenant, actually. It's a covenant.
Yes. Same applies in our cultural perspective. There is no difference. Like I mentioned to you, for me, it doesn't matter which route did you take, regardless of the stigmas attached. Because now one of my participants, they mentioned that, no man, you are being stigmatized if you undergo the route of Christian ceremonies. We don't go to other gatherings of men because they don't regard us as 100% complete men.
Sure.
Which I see as unfair now, because now where do they belong if then they undergo that? So, but that's how our cultural norms function in our society. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
But for me, I think it's one thing.
Yeah, and it is. And I think maybe it's also sometimes where it comes from, because a lot of people, unfortunately, still see Christianity as the white man's religion. Unfortunately, that's how it's seen. And because it's seen that way, it becomes very hard to make those legitimate connections between some of the elements that are just cultural and some of the elements that are really spiritual and religious, and there can be some kind of overlap between the two, but also, there are very stark differences that we need to observe and acknowledge as such. But now the next thing, let's go a bit into these indigenous knowledge systems. Embo, there were things that, for instance, medicinally, these days there's a very fine line between traditional healer and witch doctor. Yes. So things like that, it becomes very tricky to articulate such things, because the moment you look at anything medicinal traditionally, it's automatically sometimes assumed to be witchcraft. So what are some of the things that you have seen that can come from indigenous knowledge system that we can move forward with, that can not be identified with the dark side or, anything that has to do with ubungom?
I can say on that question, we as society, we tend to judge. That's number one.
True.
Without going and doing the research, it's very bad to judge someone because of his or her background, whether you are a Christian or you are someone who's undergoing cultural rituals. If you don't, or you are ill-informed of the reasons why they do that. So in terms of the traditional medicine and traditional herbalists, I don't think there's a problem there. But yes, we know almost in our society, everyone who's doing a good business, there's also going to be someone who's going to dilute the business.
True.
If there is one foreigner who comes to our country to do their business, which is very good and legit. Today, I saw some of the guys who were graduated in Malawi, in Ghana, and wherever, but they are here in my university, graduating PhDs. That means not all of them who are coming outside, they are here to sell whatever we will always assume that they are selling.
True.
Same applies in our medical side. We do have good healers, traditional healers. That maybe we can even if we can conduct a small survey, we can see that people go there and become healed without using other stuff that is diluting that. So I can say, yes, traditional medicine is still good and is still relevant. That's why now our amagriha, they are fighting for their herbs to be, I think they must be qualified in the World Health Organizations. Because now if you can think of Umhlonyane.
Yes.
There was a
look at during COVID. During COVID, it was the ultimate remedy for most things. And then yet we were like,
in Kenya.
Yes.
Yeah. But now, white person is going to come and take Umhlonyane and say, I'm going to do this, a Vicks, for instance. Is it eucalyptus?
Yes,
I'm going to take that baobab tree and make something and something and something. But now if you say, this is my medicine now, and then I can cure my fever using that. In my book, I delved in different types of traditional medicine that I grew up practicing. If I have fever, I'm just going to go and take something there by the bush without consulting any medical or traditional sangoma. My uncle is also it is called Igricha. Even if I didn't go to Malume and get a prescription, what can I do now? I'm feeling dizzy, I'm feeling sick. What must I mix with what? I knew automatically, because I grew up as a head boy in rural areas. I know which medicine, which tree, which roots I can do and cure my sickness. You see, for that I didn't have to go to school. But now if I can take that and give to World Health Organization, they will say, no man, we must measure this or that, then you can qualify this as a good medicine.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I think it's because we in the global society, checks and balances are so important, because sometimes we must also be honest that there are things that people have eaten and taken in the wild or in the bush that have killed them instantly, So sometimes I think there is some merit in research and in measuring things to say, okay, if we put milligrams of this and mix it with 5 milligrams of that, what can it produce? So because even though it's not an exact science in maybe traditional medicine, but there's also dosage, the element of dosage. You can't just take something in copious amounts and and think, nothing will happen to you. So I think the methods can also be pursued from the Western end, but it's not to say that they are, the end all and be all, and they are the ultimate truth and what's correct. Now moving on, your profession is quite something that I wasn't anticipating. You are in the profession of social work. So tell us about how you got into that career.
Yeah, I grew up in the poor background, man. Like I said earlier. So when I say poor, we used to go to school barefooted in my rural areas. Sometimes you just sleep with empty stomach.
Oh,
but you know that I must go to school. My school, where I come from, we were taught English in isiXhosa. I'm not sure if you understand.
I perfectly understand. Trust me, it still happens to this day. Yeah.
Yes. In the high school, we were taught English and mathematics in isiXhosa because we didn't know how to speak English. Same applies. I moved to Walter Sisulu University in 2010.
Yeah.
Because I completed my matric in 2008. I took gap year 2009. 2010, I went to Walter Sisulu University. I tried BSc in environmental studies because I thought I know and I like environment geography. But there I dragged, we call it ukhuqa in university, whereby you drag each and every module that you did that's failing. So I said, maybe this is not my passion. And there was also a strike actions that were happening there in Amtata. I decided to move to PE, whereby I pursued my social work in 2011 until 2014. So that's why I saw now, man, I think I have an interest and a passion and Ubuntu and a sense of assisting someone. In fact, I think I'm a philanthropist and I'm very generous to help someone.
Okay.
So that's why I saw, okay, maybe I have a heart of giving someone without even expecting them to recognize me. That's what I don't like in life. I don't want to be praised or recognized. If I helped someone, even in editing book, it doesn't have to even mention me in the acknowledgements. I know that what I did was for him or for her, not for public to know, wow, this guy is huge.
You are humble.
So I saw them while I was doing my undergrad. We are faced by many social ills in our society. There is a gender-based violence, crime rates. It's a lot that is happening in our culture. In our communities. So that's why I was passionate now while I'm in the field of social work. Then as I progressed now to the master's level, I also had my two supervisors from the Faculty of Health Sciences consulted the third supervisor from anthropology and sociology field because they said, no, man, we need a cultural expert now in your study. Because it was the first study in the history of Nelson Mandela in my faculty to do ethnographic research in the social work side. So because I did my literature review, I struggled to find even the articles written in the topic that I researched. So it was a groundbreaking one. So then the other professor who was my co-supervisor said, okay, you know what, man? I see an element of being an anthropologist now from you. Because I see now that you are also writing books, you are passionate about culture, you don't judge culture. Maybe you are an anthropologist. So that's why now I saw, was anthropology also includes language and writing books. It's language, it's dress, it's whatever we do. So I pray that I won't leave my social work in the future. And now an anthropology field.
You can merge the two,
so led me to do this
you can be a social anthropologist. How about that?
I think maybe I can do that.
Yeah, you can merge the two fields and always find a way. As they say, nothing is ever really lost. So I think whichever field of endeavor you end up maybe spending the bulk of your career time in, you will still use your social work experience and knowledge that you've gained, with your qualifications. But now, let's focus a bit on the substance of your book, right? So, looking back into how traditionally things are done, right? Ancestry is an important element, and we see it even in how the Bible, speaks of lineages, and this one came from this one and this family and tribes. So there's an emphasis on ancestry and lineages. So now tell me a little bit about the Xhosa ancestry, according to some of the research that you've done.
It's very interesting that you are asking me that question of ancestry. In the recently published book, it's called Amazomezombe. It's a novel. While I wrote that book, I decided that instead I must make this book historical based. So I went and digged in the genealogy of who I am now as Fagu clan. As you can see there, it's written Fagu.
Okay.
Who was Fagu? Where is he originally from? So I have a chapter there which consists plus or minus 15 forefathers of myself. Wow. So they are tracing them back from the first guy of this clan of Amanyauza. You see, down back to the ones that we have as our kings, because we have two kings in my clan. Is Ndamase, there by Libode, and another king in Lusikisiki. It's called Kaugeni on that side. Is Sikau. So it was very interesting for me. Okay, then I must go and dig deep on that one, because it's very important to know who is your ancestor. As you said, because in my culture, it's very important to know that, because even if you do Isiko, let's say now I graduated today. If I want to go and thank my ancestors, I must thank the correct guys. I don't have to go there and say, thank you, Jola, or thank you, Dlamini, because that's a different clans, that's a different ancestors. So I'm mixing the two. So yeah, it's very important to know your ancestors and your genealogy, where you come from. So same applies in my book. I traced in chapter 1, as I told you before we break in our network coverage. I traced who is Nguni first. In fact, we call Xhosas Abantu, people. But in my research, I found out that Ntu NTU is one of our fathers who originated from Middle Africa, from Negroid. You see, black people, they are coming straight from Africa. Then they went down to Eastern Cape and settled there. The guy was called Ntu. Before we had Xhosa, because Xhosa is also a guy from that genealogy, from those ancestors who went through to Nguni, who went through to Palo, to Hintsa, down to where we have our kings now. So it's very important to know who are you coming from. And if you don't know your facts, it's also good to say, I don't know, because we can't know everything. That's very bad about traditional belief systems, because you'll think you know your history, but some of the experts will come and say, no, man, what you are telling the media is false there. Where did you get that information? That's why we have cultural experts where we can go and consult about each and everything. Same applies to our traditional ceremonies. Most of us don't know how to do this properly. If we slaughter a goat, there is certain meat or portion that we take, and which speaks straight to ancestors. If you took the wrong portion of meat, your ceremony is not going to be good. You see, so it's very important that you know the stuff.
Because it makes me very much think of Old Testament. For instance, God is referred to as the God of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac. So it speaks of genealogy and ancestry.
Yes,
so now
yes,
what I want to, because I want the audience to also understand and maybe find relevance in some of the things that we continue to practice in our traditional sense, but then they are also now Christians. So what are the implications, of those two, not very separate, but two distinct things? So if you look at some of our traditions, is that there should be a distinction between ancestral worship, because worship is a very different thing to acknowledgement, right? So it needs to be very clear whether are you worshiping ancestors or are you acknowledging them. So what would you say is the distinction from your perspective?
I'm not that 100% in the. I'm not okay. Let me put this. I'm not saved 100%, but I go to church.
Okay.
Meaning that I'm not be able to quote some of the scriptures, even though I read the Bible every day.
All right.
But what I know is that, from Bible, we do have some genealogy, like you mentioned. This was the father of Esau and Jacob and this and this and this. Same applies in our traditional side. What I can say from that one, personally, I can say the most important part is not to judge others. If now as a Christian you believe that this one heals me better, I don't need to go and undergo your ceremonies traditionally and nothing is going to happen, then that is fine and people don't have to judge you. Same applies to those who believe in their the traditional belief systems. If they believe that, they mustn't judge Christians, because you choose whatever works for you. And if you can testify and say, no man, I prayed for this and this happened to myself. I saw a miracle in my dreams, in my vision. It was same applies in our Amakricha. They can go and dream that something is going to happen. I'm not sure what you call it. Is it deja vu or whatever you call it, to see something before it happened? Yes. Some women will say that. But if you go to the prophet, they will also say, you see, man, don't go to that route next week because the terrible accident is going to happen. You see. And the pastors will come and pray for you and then you become delivered. So that means the two, they work for us. So it doesn't matter for me which one is better. And there's nothing better than each other for myself. I go to church. I also do my homes amasiko. But some people will say, no, man, you must choose one. Now we are confused. Now, which side do you belong? This or that? Then, because I'm still 31 years old now, but as I grew up, I'm sure I'll choose which one works for me.
Because I think it's important that we have that distinction to be clear, because I spoke of indigenous knowledge systems, and that is a very different thing to ancestral worship, because ancestral worship is like idolatry, which is something that is not permissible in the Bible. So we need to be very distinct as to saying we can look at something, study it, and see if it works. But if, like you're saying, I like that you really came out forthright to say, I'm not saved. So when you are saved, it's a very different set of rules that will apply to you and your Christian walk with God. But I now want to talk about other elements of traditions. You know, we have, like you said, amasiko. And then we have but praise singing, for instance. Praise singing is something that is very big in isiXhosa, because as I could tell, when some of the presidents get inaugurated or there's some big events, then you bring out a praise singer. So tell me the significance of that part of, our tradition, and knowing iithakazelo zethu and some of the I think it's lineages or tribal names. So please explain that part to us.
Yes, it's very. That is one of the rich part of our culture, to praise singers. For instance, I write poetry. I can say I am a poet who writes down. We also have praise poets, those who go and just stand in front of the crowd and ululate and do whatever they want to do. So that is very important, because now if the president is standing there by the podium and now Imbongi comes and prays, Father of this and this and this and this, you can see the smile from our president. Wow, now this guy brings back to my roots now. He's taking me back to Soweto or to Limpopo, wherever where our president comes. By doing that praise singing, you actually taking the guy that you are praising for straight back to where he comes from. You can feel that, now I can deliver my speech. Everything now is sorted before I can speak.
Because I think
So it's very important.
it can also be something that, for instance, in terms of, like you're saying, a lot of people have also started looking at, I forget what that is called, but then tracing back, like you did, as to how far back can you trace your lineage, you know? So if you can do that, then you can look at some of the significance of either the names that people had, you know, the surnames, what do they mean? Because then people would be like, Ubanbani, wagabanbani, wagabanbani, you know, so what do all of those things mean, and what do they contribute to your identity, you know, as an African person? Because I think there should be some sort of, you know, history that signifies how far you've come, and what the weight, you know, of the names that you carry symbolizes.
Yeah. So if someone, let's say, ululates and brings you back to, oh, this is far, you automatically feel that I'm revitalized now. This guy is taking me back to my roots, where I'm coming from. And spiritually, I'm not sure if there's spiritual and cultural side. So, but spiritually, you can feel that, yeah, man, I can see my ancestors present now. Then they gave me the strength to carry on, because this guy now, he is exactly telling who I am and where I'm coming from, and he's introducing myself to others. And then it's very important to know your identity. So if someone reminds you who you are, even if you are no longer rejoicing or you don't brew your mkomboti, just to thank your ancestors, then you'll be reminded, oh man, I didn't do anything for my old people for more than 10 years now. I'm living in Cape Town, but I don't practice anything. But if someone just comes and do that, you know who you are. Because what distinguishes us as Africans is our heritage and cultural pride from other countries. If you can go to Mexico, you will see Mexicans, they still wear, is it miniskirts? Or they wear skirts. The men from Mexico wear skirts, because that symbolizes something from their culture. Even if they are here in South Africa, they can't take that away, because that symbolizes something else for them. Same applies to us as African people, especially Amaxhosa and other cultures of here in South Africa. If someone do that, you can feel that, yeah, now this guy is taking me back to my home and taking me back to my roots.
Okay, so how do you feel about Western influence when it comes to our traditions? Because it really has changed how we do everything. So now, how has that influence permeated itself in the cultural sector?
Oh, I feel bad, sis, man. So I feel bad, no, because you see, that's also came from the study that I conducted. You see, these guys are 18 years to 35, 18 to 24 years. It's a newly graduates that graduated in 2017, 2018, 2019. But they also had an outcry that now, man, you see, our ceremonies now are overshadowed by the Western culture because of modernization. Meaning that most of them, they didn't know the meaning of using this. Why is alcohol there? Because our forefathers or our elders, they don't tell the meaning of doing this in our ceremonies. The main purpose is to have fun. We entertain, we just have everything, we exaggerate now. We are breaking, that also came from the study. It's a competition, it's breaking, it's no longer the purpose of doing this, because in the past, people who were doing amasiko, they only used amas. I'm not sure if you know amas.
Yes.
Only water. Yes. We drink water, we drink amasi, and that's it. There was no alcohol there. And isiko was good. But now, as time progressed, we just took everything that is coming from Western side, and it overtakes. For instance, brandy and beers overtakes umqombothi, even in terms of intoxication.
Wow.
Umqomboti's volume is lesser than brandy and beers. But our people will take this stuff, which also results to negative influences. My participants, they reported a terrible stuff that they saw in these traditional ceremonies, especially umgidi, it's graduation days. whereby the youngsters who graduated, they stab each other after they drank alcohol.
What?
They stab each other. There is a lot of gangsterism, even in the songs that now are sung there. They are no longer the same as others. There is no stick fighting, because stick fighting is other part of indigenous knowledge system. You see, but now there is no stick fighting. There is an emailer in our pockets, because now we pay grudges to eat this guy. Oh, this guy did this in the tavern. Now it's my time that I'm going to pay back. So that's why I'm saying now the cultural, the Western culture, and some of the guys will see what's happening in our TVs from prisons. They will take that and apply in these traditional ceremonies. That's why now I'm saying this is terrible. Everything is tainted because of Western culture. Western culture doesn't have anything wrong, but what is wrong is the behavior of our people after they use this stuff. So in my class, I can say most of the guys buy a papa. They are for what? You see, so if then we can just reduce that papa, I'm sure everything can be good, even if we use brandies and beers, because we can't change anything now. But if you can change the behavior at least, or reduce, then we can be good. Because if I can say to people, stop drinking too much, no, man, you're poor. Who are you to come and tell me how much I can drink? Are you my father? You see.
Sure, so that's an interesting one, hey, because it speaks of diluting, right? But I'm worried now because what you are raising is telling me, at least if I'm hearing you correctly, that there isn't succession planning when it comes to how our traditional customs and practices are passed down from one generation to the next, right? That's what I'm hearing from you. Because if there's an initiation and there isn't anybody explaining to you what the purpose of this particular act or practice is, then you walk away from there no wiser, if I can put it that way. You just did it and you participated, but you are not really clear as to what the full extent to which you were participating, because you are talking about umqomboti element, right? So there is no succession, there is no knowledge sharing and transfer of knowledge as to why do we do X, why do we do Y? Stick fighting, what's the relevance and significance of that? What is, so that when those men then have boys, who is going to explain to them what's even supposed to happen when they get there? So there isn't even, wisdom as to when I get there, what am I going to walk away with? So it's then subject to whoever is there and doing the leading and the leadership of the boys and having them do whatever it is that is supposed to happen there. So I find that quite problematic, because we can't blame that on anybody but ourselves. If it's an important element of who we are as a people and the things that we want to sustain and carry forward with understanding, with intentionality, I find that quite problematic. That's one. And the influence of Western customs and things like, Western alcohol and I find that to be quite cosmetic. It doesn't really speak to the real essence of the rite of passage into manhood. For me, like I said, I'm naive. I don't know these things. But for instance, if I were to look biblically, if Abraham were to circumcise, his sons, why was it being done? It was a covenant, and in that covenant, there had to be teaching. There had to be, this is our God, and to worship and to praise him, this is what you do. You build an altar, you sacrifice, you put your sacrifice on the altar. If you have sinned, if you have gone astray, you understand, there's a teaching. It's not just compliance based, it is education based. So I think when it comes to that, we only can have ourselves to blame. If these things are important to us and if we hold them dear and find significance in them, then we should be the very ones that are the custodians as well as the ones who pass them down from one generation to the next.
Yeah, okay, before you go on from that, I think just to add on that, I've noticed that not everyone in our culture doesn't play a role in terms of teaching and passing over to each generation this information. What I found is that some of these newly graduates or newly guys who will go or just recently gone to the initiations or whatever ceremony that is cultural are ignorant. For instance, I'm from the NGO that deals with substance abuse, South African National Council on Alcohol and Drug Dependence. Yes. There I deal with youth and elders, but I'm going to speak about youth. The youth who's going to come to SANCA for the screening and assessment. Then I just give the platform for the parent to tell me, why did you bring this guy in? Oh, this one is using Dick Menrex. Wunga is only 16 years old. And I've talked and commended this guy and reprimanded, don't do this, is wrong. He just go to the streets and do whatever he pleases, because that's what they see on TV. That's what they see from peer pressure. That's what they teach each other in the streets. You see, I'm not talking about the culture side now. I'm just talking about the moral behavior of our kids or our youngsters. So when they go now to these ceremonies, they have their mindset that, no, man, I know these older people say, use Nkomboti for this certain role. But now, man, my peers said, that is still irrelevant, man. Nkomboti is a beer for elders. That's what my participants said. And it's irrelevant, it's outdated, it's old-fashioned. And the Brazilian beer is a modern Nkomboti. But now when you go and dig deep from our old elders, they will say, no, man, I didn't tell this information to these guys. Where did they get that? From peers. So the whole society now must be reconstructed, if we can put it like that. So it's a big debate and it's a big topic. Yeah,
I think so. But I think before we go, an important element that I want to look at, I'm not sure how comprehensively it's covered in your book, is the element of male and female relationships in Embo, if we can put it that way, because we have since evolved into quite the society that has disdain and massive disrespect for women and the role of women in society, in the home first, as well as in society. So is there any part of your book that speaks about that dynamic? Because patriarchy, we know, is something that has long been upheld and, sort of practiced, but what are the male and female dynamics from Embo that we are seeing to be vastly different in our modern day?
In my book, I didn't get a chapter or even a section on that part of feminism, patriarchy, and that and all that stuff. But in my thesis now with this study, I had a small portion whereby I got the literature review from that, whereby there was a cry that our mothers, they are just thrown away when it comes to amasiko, because a woman's place is there in the kitchen. A father is the head of the house, a woman is a tail, which is, in South Africa, you can even see from our departments, even the university departments, the majority is males who are there leading. And now you ask yourself now, why is this? Even the countries, I'm not sure whether it's Sirleaf Joseph, while the first president, I'm not sure which country was
Black
that.
female, it was Liberia.
Black is female, yeah. But now in our culture, you'll see now, even nowadays, a woman cannot do this and this because this is part for Amadoda. And Amadoda will not do this because that's part for women. If I'm talking about Intonjane now, which is initiation for girls. Men, they don't play any role there. They just go there to just drink their alcohol. And that's it. But I'm sure there is a role that they can do to mold and shape this young girl who's prepared to go to the wedding. So I still think that there is a long road that must be traveled just to reshape everything now. Because if we can work as a team, because our fear as males is that now, man, if we allow women to come, they will dilute everything. No, this is part for the bush. Why they must go there? We are very preservative in terms of our culture, which is good. But I think sometimes we exaggerate this stuff. You see, I know in some areas our women are very curious. They will speak with their boys and say, what was happening there? And the boy is not going to tell us that he told the mother that what happened there was he is protecting the culture, which is good. But they know some of the stuff that is happening there. But because we must preserve the culture and we must uphold our principles, we mustn't talk to the women about the stuff. That's why now many initiates die. Because even if the woman can come and say, I think the best solution for this death of initiates every year is this. Men will say, no, man, who are you to come and tell us? Who said we failed our guys? But you'll see that there's a good point that is coming there, but he's only coming from the woman. Then there's no role that she can say. So I'm sure there must be a lot of imbeciles that can include them in our discussions, not in the bush, maybe they're in the communities. Then they can have their voices on these topics.
Because I'm concerned that stemming from tradition are many ills that we are seeing manifested in society today. Okay, we see you are talking about women not being allowed in initiate environments and even not giving counsel in those places, right? A lot of boys today are growing up without their fathers, and it's not their fault. It's because people are deciding not to be fathers anymore. So there's a whole generation of young men who are growing up without the headship or, the leadership of a father figure over their lives. So then they go to this mountain and they don't know what to expect. They don't know what to do. But because the mother is aware that there's this thing that needs to happen, she also sends them. But she's ignorant of what is going to happen there and what he's supposed to come back as, and how she's supposed to deal with him when he's back. So do you see some of the issues that I'm talking about? Because if you are saying in the mountain they're being taught to be men, what kind of men are they coming back to be? Because look at our GBV statistics, we don't really have a lot of good men by the looks of things. So I'm just worried about, I know this is not your problem, but I'm just trying to look at, is tradition really serving us in this area between male and female relationship dynamics? Because I think Impo has its place and it has its significance. However, what role is it playing in the type of society that we find ourselves living in? Does it add to its quality or to its detriment? And that's a major concern, I think, just for me. I'm not sure if there's an answer you can give to that. If you have any thought on what I've just spoken about.
No, like I alluded earlier, I think there's a long road that we can travel in terms of bringing back things like they were done before. Patriarchy is one of the bad things that is happening in our society, and it can change today or tomorrow. But at least if as men we can't be stubborn and stick to our belief system, I'm sure even if it's big stuff, something can change there. It doesn't have to be 90% change if we include women in our talks. It doesn't harm to allow a woman or a girl to come and speak to the brother who's going to go to the initiation. Booty, I know that you've never gone there in the initiation, but please behave. Don't drink alcohol. Don't do this. You see, that's his sister. There's nothing wrong there. Because the guy now, if he's there in the bush, he will remember that, okay, my sister, who is loving me, said to me, I mustn't do this. Because he said that, okay, this is wrong. She didn't go and research what's the reason for not using this and this. But it's the sister who's concerned. So that's why I'm saying now, this exclusion or seclusion or discrimination, it doesn't work for us. As long as we can work together as a team, I'm sure there can be a solution. Maybe there's one part of the research I can take in future, but I will decide which one I can take when I do PhD, so that everyone can have a voice in this stuff.
Yes. And I think it'll be an important one because it's something that is seldom looked at. I would highly recommend you include it. But yeah, you'll decide. Now, I think my parting question, or before we go, what are some of the things that you yourself, based on your research, would recommend that we sustain, preserve, and continue when it comes to traditional practices?
Is to go back to our roots. Is to know who we are, because now if you know and you can stick to your language, no one can take your language away from you. If I can think about China, the president, is it Jinping? I can't remember the name.
Yeah,
president of China. Yes. If the president of China comes and delivers a speech in South Africa, he comes with the translator to translate in English. Same applies the Russian president and other presidents of other countries. But now, if our president goes and delivers a speech in the UK, he must speak English. Why? Well, my president must speak, if it's Venda, he must speak Venda, because we have 11 official languages in South Africa. So he can choose which one he can speak, and someone must come and translate for that. Because now that's why most languages distinct, and then they just vanish, because now we are forced to only speak English. And now if someone comes and speaks Xhosa, no man, you see, you are old-fashioned. You see, who said I'm old-fashioned if I'm expressing myself in Xhosa? The book that I wrote, there was 444 entries in the Sala Awards.
What?
And I was nominated by Pooe, my publisher.
Yes.
From that 444 books, it's 11 official languages that I'm talking about, not Xhosa only. They selected 33 books from 444. From 33 books, it was only 2 books that were nominated in Non-Fiction Creative Award. I was nominated with the book from other professors who written letters for soul plagiarism, stuff like that.
Wow.
We both won from that award and we shared the prize. That means that my book now was very important, even if it's a Nguni book. But now if I translated that book to English, I don't know if it was going to win the Sala Awards. You see, so that's why I'm saying now, as long as we know who we are, everything can go smooth and fluently. We don't have to change things, but we must remember who we are. We must know whatever we do can create history to the newborns that are gonna, from today onwards. They will say that, oh, Xhosa people do this stuff and that, and they will think this is right, which is wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So you can just tell our audience how they can get in touch of you, of the book, if they want to purchase a copy.
Okay, I think the simplest way is to check me on Facebook. My name is MZOLLY Mavimbela, MAVIMBELA. So they can just inbox me there and find out about my book. The book is, the last time I checked, I think it's 210, including the delivery. So whenever they are, then that is included. But the books are, they can get my books from the publisher. I don't have any copy from my side because I used a traditional publisher from this. I didn't self-publish it. My publisher is in Johannesburg.
Yes,
so I'm sure the guys
know your
on
publisher.
that side. Yes, it can be easy from that side to access my book. But for other provinces, then the publisher use either Aramex, Couriers, or PEP Pexi.
Okay.
So it's very easy. Or else they can phone me on 073 000 1407 or WhatsApp me there.
Okay.
Then we can talk books.
All right, perfect. I thank you so much for coming on, sharing your knowledge about, and your passion for our cultures, our traditions, and how we can possibly see and find ways of moving them forward. I really appreciate your time. After the break, I'm going to be signing off with you guys. Please stay tuned, and I'll catch you right after the break. Welcome back. So, yeah, that was a very good session with Mzo because, yeah, culture and tradition are a very tricky and fine line for us to straddle, especially as Christians, because I think that we sometimes cannot get away from where we come from, our roots. The Bible does not downplay elements of genealogy, elements of knowing from the lineage from which you come. My only challenge and big challenge sometimes with our traditional practices is just the element of ancestral worship. We really need to be very distinct and very clear as to where we stand as Christians when it comes to that, and things like sacrifices and uklabela nje, general things. So we need to really know what we are doing when we are practicing these things, and what the implications are when we are people of the faith. But I really liked what Mzo had to say about all the different elements. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to our male-female relationships. Traditionally, how are those roles played out? What are some of the restrictions that are imposed on women that really act as a chain more than a support structure for our women and young girls to grow up to be the women that they are destined to be. But that is just it from me for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I think next week we are going to chat to someone else, someone more interesting as well, and we will catch each other then. Have a fruitful week. I know it's Christmas next week or the week after. Yeah, we are close, but have a fruitful week, and may God bless you.